We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. Slogans, right? It's very important. Most people in this world, they don't read books about politics. You give them a 500, 600-page book on why capitalism's bad, they're not going to read it. But I think there's a lot of people that understand that right now in the United States, a lot of people are suffering. Whether it's the opioid epidemic, whether it's the crisis of low wages, whether it's crumbling infrastructure, whether it's the fact that at this point, so many of the good-paying jobs are gone, whether it's the fact that so many people feel ultimately like their life really doesn't have a purpose, right? They're not part of a project to build up their community. Instead, they're just kind of cast off on their own, told to do their own thing, find satisfaction in making profits, told that there is no truth. There's a lot of people that are dissatisfied. And I think that part of that dissatisfaction is rooted in this belief that, the state has no obligation, right? Why should the people that we vote for try to make our lives better, right? The government is best that governs least. The government should just step back, and let the Wall Street profiteers make money, right? Why should they step in? Why do they care? Why is it any concern of the government if our standard of living is decreasing, if the life expectancy of the USA has dropped, if wages are going down, if the next generation is stuck in a cycle of short-term, low-wage jobs, if people are spending their lives in debt? Why is that any concern of the government, right? Right? The government should just sit back, laissez-faire, free market. Well, I think that most Americans, I'd say the overwhelming majority, don't agree with that. They would argue that the government has an obligation to serve the people. Well, I would say that as someone who believes in socialism, someone who believes we ought to have a society in which the banks, factories, and industries and major centers of economic power are operated to serve public good, not just to make profits for a rich group of owners, I would say that what needs to be said more than anything right now is this. We need a government of action to fight for working families. That slogan should be everywhere. That slogan should be everywhere. You should be able to hear that slogan everywhere in U.S. society right now. That slogan is the antidote to neoliberalism and the rule of profits. It's the antidote to this poisonous ideology of greed and individualism and indifference to the suffering of your fellow man. This obligation, this idea that the government has no obligation to serve working families needs to be obliterated. I think most Americans would overwhelmingly agree that we need a government of action, not do-nothing government. Roosevelt used to talk about how do-nothing government was a scourge on the country. They don't want do-nothing government. They want a government of action that will fight for working families. So, if you want to change society, if you want to talk to people about socialism in a language that they can understand, repeat this slogan as much as you can. We need a government of action to fight for working families.